for your. So before we get started, I just want to make sure that you guys are ready for a powerful session. So again, if you haven't already, grab your water, your tea, or your coffee. Make sure you're in a space where you have minimal interruptions as possible. During this meeting, it is a webinar style, so you won't be able to turn on your camera, but you can utilize the chat feature because we do want to keep you engaged and make sure we answer any and all questions that you may have. Here's a preview of our agenda. It is an all-star cast and we are super excited. So this is going to be a session that you don't want to miss. If you do have to, for whatever reason, leave your desk or you have to leave us a little early, don't worry. We will have this presentation recorded. You can come back. Or because it's so good, it's going to be so good, you want to reference it and review the material. You'll have a copy of that as well. So really quick, we just want to give a shout out to the board of directors. If some of you are on, we are so grateful that you're able to join us, and you can throw that in the chat as well. Behind the scenes, SACAC is led by a dedicated board of directors that set direction, manage operations, ensure the responsible use of our funds of our association as well. The board plays a key role in shaping the future of our organization and offers members a meaningful opportunity for leadership and professional growth. But this work could and would not be done without our volunteers, which are many of you that serve on the committees to help our organization to not only survive, but thrive. We thank you for your time, your talent, and your shared passion for all that you do with SACAC. So a little bit about SAI, and at the SACAC conference, Allison actually from the PD team, she rolled off the board, but she was serving on PD. She called SAI, State and Area Initiatives, the informants. And we laughed at that because a part of that is really true. We do give you the information, and we do it in ways such as our fall SAI or State and Area Initiative meetings. So each state that is under our umbrella, they have a state and area initiative chair who coordinates a virtual fall meeting and leads the state meeting at the SACAC annual conference. These meetings provide a space to share SACAC updates and address the unique needs of admissions, college, and school counseling professionals across the state. Next slide, please. We also have our SACAC drive-in workshops, in which, again, without our volunteers, this work would be impossible. Our drive-in workshops are one-day professional development events offered virtually or in person for high school counselors and advisors. Our in-person sessions they typically include a very small registration fee. And our virtual sessions, while virtual, you also get the recording as well. Each workshop is planned and led by our driving workshop coordinators and features engaging sessions with practical insights and opportunities for connection. At least one drive-in workshop is hosted in every SACAC state each year, typically in the early spring before our SACAC annual conference in March. All right, I'm going to kick it over to Kristen.
Hey everyone, I'm going to talk about a few programs that SACAC offers over the summer. The first one being Summer Seminar, and this year it will be hosted at Belmont and Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee. The dates for you will be July 15th to July 18th, and registration is actually open right now. But this is a great opportunity for folks who just transitioned to the high school side. So when I started on the high school side, I attended Summer Seminar. And it was really great to help me just learn before I started on that side of the desk. So there are sessions about working with your students on that side, and then also you'll get to visit some campuses in the area where it's hosted. And then Dry Run is hosted at Rollins College this summer. Registration is also open currently for this, and this is great for new staff members on the college side. So if you know that you will be hiring some new admissions counselors, you can go ahead and register them for this, but it's a lot of information just to help them get ready to hit the road for their first travel season. And then the Sweet Tea Tour, this is hosted in a different region of SACAC every summer. And this year it's going to be in South Florida. But this is a great opportunity to be on a bus with some of your closest SACAC friends and have the opportunity to see campuses in the area. So we do all of the legwork for you. All you have to do is register and you get to see a number of college campuses in the area. Again, registration is open currently for this. Sweet Tea Tour does fill up. So if you haven't registered, I would recommend going ahead and doing that soon.
And we're
Hi,
going to,
everyone. I am Arlene Outerbridge, and I am the current SACAC president. Just recently received that. And I bring you greetings from our presidential team and our board, and happy to be with you today. Thank you to the State Area and Initiatives team for putting together this SACAC-wide workshop. I think it's amazing that we're able to do this across our region. And so again, thank you for the time and energy that goes into this. If you could go to the next slide for me, I think we just lost our slides. I'm not sure if it's there, but
1 second.
okay. I know it's on the slide, so I'll go ahead and get talking. Just recently, I know some of you may have been at the SACAC conference and some of you may not have been able to make it. But one of the things that I think was a driving theme across the conversations that I've had, even during the time that I was able to speak to our membership, is really to talk about this idea of gratefulness and having gratitude and having it be something that drives our thinking each day. And I wanted to share with you all that that is something that I try to practice on a daily basis, because as we face a lot of difficulty sometimes within our work, it is hard sometimes to see the good and want to be able to share that with you. I apologize for my voice. I'm actually sick today, so want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. You guys can hear me? You can hear, okay, awesome. So as I'm thinking about gratitude, I want you guys to be able to think about your own work, your own space, and your own life, and really be thinking about ways that you could start your day with even one thing that you're grateful for, because I'll tell you the days that I don't do it, it sets me off in a different path than when I'm able to at least be reminded of that. And to be honest with you, sometimes, depending on how the day goes, I may need to do this more than one time during the day. So I would encourage you guys, as you think about your work and think about the many things and the many hats that we wear, that you think about this idea of gratitude just kind of being the forefront of your mind. Um, you're going to have a wonderful opportunity to hear lots of amazing things today. So I'm not going to share all the wonderful things that SACAC does, because you're going to experience a lot of that. But one thing I wanted to just remind us of, and I'm going to ask a little bit of participation in this. So get ready to be on your keyboards to kind of throw this into the chat. But the mission statement, which Monique kind of said briefly a while ago, but this is our mission statement as part of SACAC, which is that we foster a collaborative and inclusive network of college admission counseling professionals by promoting ethical responsibility, professional growth, student access, advocacy, and outreach, and equipping and supporting professionals to help all students realize their post-secondary educational goals. That's a mouthful. It's a lot that we have put together into this driving statement that identifies what we do as an organization. And one of the things that I did was actually highlight the things that mean something to me because I've experienced it from a certain perspective. And I would ask that you all look quickly at this mission statement. And can you pick one word in there that you think of when you think of maybe you're new to SACAC, maybe you're not a member as yet, but something that you're either hoping that can be a part of what you do each day. And if you are a SACAC member and have been doing this for a while, what have you experienced? So picking one of those words in there and kind of throwing it into the chat. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to do that. But the ones that I highlighted was collaborative, advocacy, outreach, and supporting. And those are words that carry a lot of weight. And I want us to understand as an organization that we take each of the words that are in this mission statement seriously, and that each of them have programming, support, thinking about this, even when we sit in our board meetings, how we are accomplishing these things. So I love looking across the list that has come across, and I've seen things like you guys are saying collaborative, inclusive, access, advocacy, belonging, I think is great. Network, being able to equip. That's really all those verbs and all of those words have a lot of action behind them. But I will be the first to say we don't claim that we do everything perfectly every single time. And how we are able to accomplish all of this is by the multitude of volunteers that we have that are doing the everyday in their state or their town. And I want to take a moment in the vein of gratitude to thank you. Thank you so much for all the things that happen behind the scenes and right in front of everyone when we do something like this today, where we're right in front of you as well. But also so much that happens behind the scenes to make sure that the words that you just put on the screen are happening, that there is growth, that we are figuring out ways to advocate. We're thinking about ways to help each other feel like we belong, making sure that we are a place of networking, that we can support one another. All of those are words that mean a lot. And so I sometimes when organizations do mission statements, it's like a nice thing to say. What I'd like to share with you today, it's not only is it very comprehensive, but it's quite active. And we are consistently trying to find ways to meet the mission statement in multiple ways. So again, I thank every volunteer, every leader, every person that's the head of a committee, everyone that is doing the work that not many of us see on a day-to-day basis, but we know that in the end that we do have wonderful results. So thank you for that. And if you have a moment to kind of put that mission statement somewhere that's clearly defined for you, and maybe that one word that you identified, figure out ways that you might be able to make some of those things happen. So as you think about, maybe you selected access, maybe you selected advocacy, maybe you selected this idea of networking. I ask that all of us take that one word that we might have thought about and think of ways that we are allowing that to happen. Sometimes we think about what we would like to have happen, and that's what's important to us. But it becomes even more important when we select that item and actually do something about it. So if you selected advocacy, maybe you're helping our Groverell team. You know, maybe it's this idea of being a space where people can come and learn with you. Maybe it's how you approach, how you speak with your admissions reps or your college counselors or your students. It's all of those things that embodies this mission. So I hope you take the time to do that. I also wanted to just share quickly what is on our website as to what SACAC is focused on. We've done our strategic plan and we are going to actually relook at that, but these strategic goals are in place until 2027. And I'm not going to go through each of them, but I wanted you to know that we are focused on these 4 strategic goals, and all of our programming, all of our ways that we reach people are through the lenses and paradigm of these strategic goals. And we wanted you to be able to see what those are, Again, I'm not going to read through them or go through them in detail, but they are on our website. If you want to take a look at what our actual strategic plan is, it is also on our website at sacac.org. I want to give SAI a thank you again for allowing me a couple of minutes to just share my thoughts with you today about gratitude, about our mission and our strategic goals, to be able to for you to just see a little tiny insight into what it is that we're doing. But we will continue the programming now because what we have ahead of you is an amazing program. And we thank you for all the people that have taken the time out of their schedule to join us today and also to present. So we hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful week.
And next we have Jason C. He is the Senior Director of Outreach for THEC and TSAC. He is based in Nashville, Tennessee. And if you were at conference, Jason received an award from SACAC, and we just greatly appreciate all of the events that he attends and speaks at for us. So I'll turn it over to Jason.
Hey, Kristen, thank you so much for that. And SACAC family, hey, bless you guys. Arlene, please feel better. And but congratulations. I shouldn't say but. Congratulations on your presidential leadership. How about that? All right. So this morning, Kristen gave me the task of giving you a financial aid update, specifically from a FAFSA perspective, and knowing that I have some of our friends, quote, home here in Tennessee joining us, but all across the Southeast, in your state, your priority FAFSA deadline may be soon approaching. So again, I'm going to go over some FAFSA reminders and then also end with some FAFSA updates. So bear with me. I'm going to share my Monique, Darren, forgive me. Oh, there we go. Now I should be able to share. Thank you. All right, full screen hopefully will work. All right, cool. So we're going to begin here. This is an abbreviated version of the presentation I did at the SACAC conference a few weeks ago about, quote unquote, the new FAFSA that my colleague and I, Paul Martin, shout out Paul, that we co-presented together. As we began that presentation.
Hey, Jason, we don't
Yes?
see the presentation.
Oh, forgive me, guys. Kristen, how about now?
Yes.
And full screen now?
Yep, you're good.
Forgive me, guys. We'll start here again. As Paul and I began that presentation, we talked about how really maybe the most difficult part of the new FAFSA is the account creation process. So a few reminders, especially for anyone who potentially is assisting families with completing the FAFSA. When it comes to creating your accounts, as a reminder, a student needs to have an account, and at least one parent will need to have an account as well. So generally speaking, to complete the free application for federal student aid, the student needs an account, and at least one parent will need to have an account. I always use this because some people do better with, quote, visuals. Here's a family of three. In terms of the student is about ready to go to college. So mom, dad, student goes to tackle the FAFSA. The student needs an account. And in the sense where parents are married and they filed taxes jointly in 2023, as required by the 25-26 FAFSA, in this case, this is the illustration of where the one student and one parent need to have accounts. What's quote unquote new that began last year with the 24-25 FAFSA and continued into this year and beyond is if you have married or remarried parents whose filing status in 2023 was separate, all right? That's the example where not only do I need to have the student to have an account, but I would need to have each parent have a FSCID in order to complete their sections of the FAFSA. Within the student's FAFSA, this is where they identify their parents and essentially identify Do they have a quote 2-parent household versus a 1-parent household? And there's a series of questions that a student may encounter to help identify, again, a 1-parent versus 2-parent household. Obviously, that first question the student um, answers is, are the parents married to each other? In those 2-parent household scenarios where you say yes, right, then in that case, that is identifying a 2-parent household. But for those of us that work with students whose parents may be divorced, separated, never married, widowed, whatever the case may be, understand there's this series of questions that the student will specifically tackle within their section to identify the 1-parent versus 2-parent household. From an FSAID creation perspective, obviously, if you have, say, deadlines from the college perspective, or again, your state agency has a FAFSA deadline, kind of as a couple of reminders, we do encourage students and parents to have their accounts created, otherwise known as their FSAIDs, at least 3 days prior to completing the FAFSA. Understand when you create your account, it must go through a Social Security Administration match for those of us that have Social Security numbers. Generally speaking, that only takes 1 day to authenticate. But for those of us that wait for that authentication to happen, those generally are the users that have the best FAFSA experience. An update for some. Remember, last year was the first time that our parents without Social Security numbers that we served had to create accounts, had to create these FSAIDs, just like someone like you or me that has a social. Early on, there was this identity verification process that they had to go through. As a reminder, that process has been paused for the 25-26 FAFSA cycle. So again, a parent without a social, they must complete and create an account, I should say, but they will not have to go through that identity verification process at this time. A couple just through the creation screens, reminders. If you do have and are working with mixed status families where, right, you have the student who's a U.S. citizen, but the parents do not have socials, as a reminder, when they go to create their accounts, there's a box that they check to indicate that they do not have a social. I know I still hear from some colleagues or some counselors, I get asked, like, Jason, do we still enter all zeros for the Social Security number, or do we use the parent's ITIN to create the account? The answer is no. If the parent does not have an SSN, they will check that box to, again, indicate that they do not have a Social Security number. When when creating your username and identifying email, just as a reminder, especially for our high school seniors, they should use their personal email. I'm assuming, like in Tennessee, many of our southern states, once you graduate from high school, I know here, oftentimes that high school email is turned off, right? And understand, this FAFSA is not just a 1-year application. It is something that they most likely will be doing for the next 4 or 5 years with their parents. So always encourage students to use a personal email, and if they don't have one, create one first. For years, step 3 has asked, and this is the FSAID creation, has asked for the user to indicate their permanent address. And here in the last year and a half, I've been fortunate to connect with many colleagues, not only in the Southeast, but all across the United States, as this new FAFSA was launched. And shout out to a colleague in New York State who gave this piece of information of, specifically when serving students who may be homeless or unaccompanied, they suggested using general delivery in the address field, right? Because if they lack a permanent physical address, they don't have anything to report. So the feedback of using general delivery is something that that I've begun using as I do these presentations. So if you're serving a student or anyone that's concerned with potentially identifying their address, that's a tip when they're creating their FSCID to use general delivering in the address field. I'm going to pause for a second. Monique, I see your camera on. I know when I usually do webinars and do it with a colleague, that's the key cue of, I bet there's a question that I need to pause and answer.
And because you are who you are absolutely correct. And I do want to say, Kirsten has a great question in the chat, but I don't think I mentioned is you are welcome to use the Q&A feature as well for questions. So Jason, you do have a question.
Yes.
I actually now see two questions. In today's climate, are parents without a social security number putting themselves at risk by checking that box?
Yeah, great question, Monique. And to be clear, folks, I don't know if anyone is able to answer that right with 100% clarity and 100% certainty. As I've worked with mixed status families across our state, and when I've been asked that question, at the end of the day, my response has been this. FAFSA is the application that my agency requires for students to apply for certain grants and scholarships. So understand, if you want to be considered for some of our state aid programs, you must ultimately complete the FAFSA by whatever deadline, FAFSA deadline, is associated with that program. That being said, I respect, right, anyone's concern about completing this application. So my best advice is, like, listen, at the end of the day, this is a family decision. I know, I mean, I'll say this, working with my colleagues here in Tennessee, if I have families who are concerned and are potentially waiting on completing the FAFSA, and if there has been a priority FAFSA deadline that's passed, one thing I've shared, and again, this is a decision that we've made, is to share that, hey, we have an appeals process at our state agency where if you miss a FAFSA deadline for whatever reason, that you can appeal to us for an exception for that. So Monique, and for whomever asked that question, I mean, that's how I would approach it in terms of um, all of us, personally, professionally, right? All of us um, uh, are hearing and listening, and reading news every day. And so I think for our mixed status families, I think I would just be clear with them to understand why FAFSA is potentially needed to apply for certain sources of aid. I'll defer to you in your state. In Tennessee, a lot of our programs are connected to the FAFSA, right? But in other states, potentially it's may simply be the federal aid component that you're completing the FAFSA. And understand, there is still time to complete the FAFSA into May, into June, into July, even into August, September, to potentially to be considered for federal aid if at some point in time they feel maybe they're less concerned at that point in time based upon some more recent news. So Monique, hopefully that was a good response.
And she said, thanks, Jason. Yes. And always, for those of you attending, if you have additional questions as the presenter is maybe responding, or if you would like clarification, please don't hesitate to put that in the chat as well. We have one more question, Jason. Anna said, what does that mean? Can you give an example of how that address works? And I'm assuming maybe the general delivery. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, Anna, I'm a little behind on your question. I think that may be what she's referring to.
So, Ann, right there, if you look at the screen where it says 1234 Main Street, this is where I'm saying that the New York colleague suggested that they can just type in general delivery and then the city, the state, and the zip, because really these are just fields, folks. Right? They're just fields that you are entering information in. Unlike, say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the U.S. Department of Education, FAFSA, rarely now sends anything via postal mail. I think the exceptions that some of you are listening to me and some of you that know me well, the exceptions might be that student that, oops, they submitted their FAFSA using the wrong social, that's typically when the FAFSA submission summary potentially is still sent via mail. But again, for those individuals that specifically are homeless unaccompanied, using general delivery, the city, state, and zip, or for a family that might be concerned about providing that information, I think using general delivery as the address, as my colleague in New York suggested, I think that's a great maybe best practice in serving some of our families that might have concern about sharing their permanent residence. Mobile number. Just FYI, I know we see this more and more and more, where when you enter your mobile number, creating your account, you might get this message that it's already in use. And folks, that's simply because there are tens of millions of users that have created FSC IDs dating back to now, I believe, 2016. And especially with this, say, generation of student, but also parent, and so many changing mobile numbers so often, there's a great chance that that mobile number that you just received as a quote student who has a cell phone for the first time, let's say, it may be already associated with another FAFSA account, right? Because that number has been recycled. So if a user ever receives this message, my advice, delete the mobile number, push on. If they ever want to potentially use that mobile number to reset their account or whatever it may be, they would need to contact FAFSA to get that done. Completing the FAFSA. The recommended process is the student starts, invites their parent, completes the student sections, signs and submits, and then the parent logs in, accepts the invite, completes the parent section, signs and submit, and you have a completed FAFSA. As some of you have experienced, for some of our families, this may take, no joke, 15 minutes total, right? A lot of our parents, it's only taken 5 minutes to complete the parent section. But again, the recommended process is for the student, once the accounts have been created and authenticated, is for the student to start, complete their section, then have the parent log in, accept the invite, sign, submit, and then the FAFSA is done. Except for mixed status families. As again, some of you may know, for our mixed status families, there are still some hiccups with this FAFSA process, but folks, it's a heck of a lot better than it was this time last year. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, be thankful you don't know what I'm talking about. But for mixed status families, again, let me pause and remind you, mixed status family, a student that is a U.S. citizen, but their parents do not have socials. That's what I'm referring to when you hear me say mixed status family. These families must start the FAFSA from the parent perspective, okay? The parent must start the FAFSA and essentially invite the student. That is the, quote, best way to do the FAFSA from a mixed status family perspective. I know in recent weeks, however, I've had mixed status families and students that perhaps completed the FAFSA from the other way and have had some outstanding FAFSA issues that I've now gone and helped with. These FAFSAs are correctable if they are considered incomplete, if the student started it and this, that, and the other. But again, if you're working with a family who is just now beginning this process, and specifically a mixed status family, have them start from the parent perspective once the account's been created. And the last bit of advice, just in general, is this: if you ever run into a FAFSA issue, sometimes the best advice is just to delete the FAFSA and start over, right? Especially from a student's perspective, there are still some glitches. Again, so much better than this time last year, but at times, say last week, I was at a high school here in Nashville and had a student that apparently been working on the FAFSA for, say, 3 weeks, and they weren't able to get past one particular screen. And I said, all right, take a deep breath. Let's delete it. So we deleted the form, we started over, and then we were able to submit it within, 10 minutes or whatever. So again, don't be fearful of a FAFSA that has not been submitted yet. But if they're running into, issues or whatever, sometimes the best advice is delete the form and then start over. Just a couple other tidbits, and then we'll go into a few updates. The data matching data is so important. So understand that within the student section, the student currently must invite their parent to do the parent section. And so what you see here on the left hand, this is a busy screen, I apologize guys, but on the left, this is the quote student's invite screen on the far left, right? Where student says, my mom is Jane Smith, date of birth, social security number. Please understand that information must match what would be under mom's personal information within her FSAID account. So sometimes when a invite is not going through, this is why I always say, student, let's bring up your parent invite screen, and parent, let's have you log in, go to settings in your personal information so that we can look at these screens side by side. And so if you look at this side by side, like, one thing you see in red there is, well, mom's last name under her account is Roberts, or her year of birth is 1967, whereas look at the parent invite from the student's perspective, the student said 1976, or the student indicated that mom's last name is Smith. Especially when you are working with parents and that perhaps have had last name changes. These are these little issues that sometimes you and I will find by simply comparing information, right? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with FAFSA for our users is it's so much about attention to detail, right? Notice the thought bubbles here. There's also the thought bubble, especially with parents without socials. For the student to invite them where they indicate no social, they've got to make sure whatever address they enter matches whatever address is connected to that parent's account. So something as simple as the parent said that my address is 123 Main Street, ST, but the student saying 123 Main, STREET, that will not allow that invite to go through because everything must match, right? So remember that as potentially some students and parents experience some hiccups. From the parent side, just a reminder, the family size screen, I'm still encouraging all my families. The question is your family size different from what you claimed on your 23 tax return? I encourage all of my families to still say yes so that they see what family size is reflected. So for example, if in this case you see the family size reflects 3, well, if I actually have 4 in my family, that's where in that box there at the bottom, you would want to add a 1 to change that family size. Monique, talk to me.
I'm back. So we have a couple questions in the chat.
Yep.
The first one, Paola says, what if an 18-year-old student who was a dependent in the prior year desires to submit the FAFSA on their own? Can they do this? Is the first question.
Yeah.
The parents are divorced. This student is now estranged from both parents. They are not a mixed status family. That's a pretty heavy question. I probably should have broken that up a little bit. You want me to go back and read it?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
But Paola, like you obviously like coach me and coach Monique, in terms of if I'm not answering this. Monique, this is where, hey, again, guys, bless you for inviting me to come on and do this. This is one of those things, if I had done my full presentation, right, if time had allowed, I would have actually gone over our personal circumstances. But Paula, since you brought it up, let's kind of go over them right now. Generally speaking, until a student reaches the age of 24, they're going to need a parent's information on the FAFSA. Folks, when I go around and teaching FAFSA to professionals or to families, I always lead with that. Like tonight, I'm going to be at Lead Academy High School here in town and talking to underclassmen families. And that's the first thing I'm going to lead with. with the parents, students in the audience, generally speaking, until your son or daughter reaches the age of 24, they're going to need the parent information to complete the FAFSA. So that being said, when I hear hey, Jason, my son or daughter has turned 18, can they do the FAFSA on their own? Or, hey, Jason, this, that, and the other has happened. I always say, it's like, all right, let's first go through all of the personal circumstances, right? For example, is the student in a legal guardianship per state court? Do you, the high school or school district or college, deem the student homeless unaccompanied? Has the student been in foster care since they turned age 13? Are they married? Do they have a child of their own? Are they a military veteran or currently serving? These are those questions that the student will review as they complete their student section of the FAFSA. If they're able to indicate yes to any of them, that will then make them independent, right? That being said, Monique, to Paula's second point of the question about being estranged from the parents, this is where I would then say, okay, again, do any of these circumstances apply, right? That are laid out on the FAFSA. And if they don't, there is that screen that says, student, do you have an unusual circumstance? And if they do, this is where the student can say, yes, I have an unusual circumstance. Well, what does this mean? Well, what this means is at some point, the student and their prospective college financial aid office needs to talk to one another about the situation, right? And ultimately, as a professional, you need to realize that that student is at the mercy of that prospective college's decision. Monique, if I may, I'm going to give you a quick example. So this past fall, I worked with a student who was raised with their grandmother really since birth, but the grandmother never adopted the student. The grandmother never went through a court process to get legal guardianship, blah, blah, blah. And so in this case, said student, you're going to have to say you have an unusual circumstance. When the student went to this college to talk to them about this scenario, the question the college asked was, when's the last time you had contact with your mom and dad? And the student said, well, I talked to my mom last week. And when they said that, all of a sudden it was like, hey, I need your mom's information, right? So those unusual circumstances, I always say, you're at the mercy of the college, right? And you're at the mercy of you sharing your story about what your situation is. And also, in those situations, that's who's going to make that decision. And Paula, if this is something you and I need to talk offline about, because I know it's 9:46 now, and I'm sure Monique wants me to wrap up soon, but Paula and to anyone, if we need to talk offline about this, let's do that, because I know that's a lot right there.
She did say thank you in the chat, and I hope she did hear what you said about if you like to further that conversation. And you've been excellent with ensuring you follow up. We do have one more question, really quick. If a student plans to get married later this summer, should they file with or without their parents' information? These are yes, excellent questions,
Monique.
Jason.
Family. That's a great question.
Excellent.
Monique, forgive me, the person asking that, the same thing similar to Paula. I want, seriously, I think I want us to email about that offline. Although I do want to answer for the greater good as well. Because this is a scenario that I think prior to the 24-20 FAFSA, I had a good handle on. Honestly, in this last year and a half, I haven't really been posed this question in a while. So I want to maybe triple check the FSA handbook to make sure
Understood.
it's still the same. But there are times, guys, in the FSA handbook, the Federal Student Aid Handbook, that we all have access to. All of us can have access to it. There are some scenarios on when a FAFSA must be updated and when some scenarios when it cannot be updated until, say, the next year. And Monique, honestly, I think this marital status change is in that gray area. I would like to look at the 25-26 handbook and just triple check. That being said, right here, right now, my assumption is the handbook perhaps still reflects that if a student is married or gets married, but initially was a dependent when they complete the FAFSA, my assumption, I think, used to be that that student would remain dependent for the year in which when they submitted the FAFSA, they were dependent, and then the independence would pick up the next year. So back in the day, Monique, my advice was, okay, so for today, since we haven't touched the FAFSA, let's go and use one of those FAFSA estimators, right? And see, like, all right, example one, if I use mom, dad's information, here is my potential Pell eligibility versus if I use mine and my spouse's information, what is my potential Pell eligibility? And I do look at Pell eligibility, right? And then from there, make that determination from there. That's what I used to suggest. But for that individual, let's you and I talk offline. Let us triple check the FSA handbook together. And then that way we have clarity that we can provide the student that we're working with. How about that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason.
Hey, with permission, may I have like 120 more seconds?
Absolutely. We have time. Go right
Oh,
ahead.
okay.
Mhm.
All right. Parent income reminder. Again, parents must provide that consent. Students must provide consent. Notice that bullet point. Anyone touching the FAFSA, so student, parent, they must provide this consent regardless of tax filing status. The consent that they're providing is essentially like, hey, is say FAFSA, you may reach out to talk to the IRS to see if I in fact filed taxes and bring that information in. That's the consent that all users must provide. If a user chooses to decline the consent, they will not be eligible for federal aid or state aid because their FAFSA would be considered incomplete until consent is provided. So everyone, regardless of filing status, must provide that consent. So for many of our students that we serve, they may not have had to file taxes in 2023. They still have to provide that consent. You know, the parent that makes less than the IRS tax filing threshold, right, and didn't file taxes in 2023, they still have to provide that consent in order for FAFSA to reach out to the IRS to just double check. When the IRS transfer, otherwise known as the DDX, the Direct Data Exchange, when does it fail? Well, it fails when the user's FSC ID has not been authenticated. That, again, is why it's so important for users to create their FSC IDs. Best practice is at least 3 days prior to completing the FAFSA, but most users are able to, quote, get away with doing it a day in advance because most accounts are authenticated within a day. Another example when the DDX will fail, when the current marital status does not agree with the 2023 filing status. So think about this. For your parents who filed jointly in 2023, but who now have subsequently separated or divorced, and the student has identified that they now are with a single parent, right? And then the parent, when they go to do their FAFSA or do their part of the FAFSA, identifies a, quote, single, divorce, separated, even widowed filing status. This is an example where the DDX will fail because, right, the IRS, when the FAFSA talks to the IRS, it will say, well, hey, you know, such and such filed jointly in 2023, but, you know, indicated now that they are a single, quote unquote, single status. So this is where, you know, it's still good to me for all families to have their 23 tax information with them to complete the FAFSA, just in case things like this that have occurred, right? ITIN tax filers, meaning our parents without socials who were able to file taxes, and ITIN. This is an individual tax identification number. These numbers begin with the number 9. Anytime you see a 1040 and in the social field, a quote 9, a number that leads with the number 9, this is an ITIN, and this should tell you and me this parent does not have a social. I-10 tax filers are unable to use the DDX. They're going to have to manually enter their tax information. And then the parent assets, just FYI, understand not all parents have to are presented their asset screen questions. And why is this? If the student is eligible for maximum Pell, if the parent's income is less than $60,000, or if the parent indicated that someone in their household received one of the federal benefits, like free and reduced lunch, or the earned income credit, or Medicaid, etc., that will skip the parent's assets on the FAFSA. And then finally, and then we'll finish with some updates right quick. FAFSA submission summary. Guys, this used to be the student aid report. Only the student now has access to it. And because so many families will be able to, quote, use the IRS direct data exchange where that tax info from 23 seamlessly transfers from the IRS into FAFSA, please understand that information will not appear on the summary. So if, as I have, some families who have questioned their need calculation, their student aid index for these families, really they're going to have to work with their college about maybe to double check all the information right if they are questioning something, because you and I are not going to be able to see anything through their FAFSA submission summary any longer unless the DDX did not work, and then we would be able to see what they manually entered for their income information. For everyone, if you need videos for FAFSA, I've recorded 6 short FAFSA videos walking the user through the complete FAFSA. All videos are approximately 2.5 minutes in length. They're found on our website. And let's wrap up here. The future. Oh, Monique, you got something? Ashley, you got something? No? All right, we're going to wrap up right here. Especially for anyone that did attend our session, these are actually the new slides. So last week I was at a conference, and a representative from the U.S. Department of Education announced the potential of a new invite process beginning with the 26-27 FAFSA. These screenshots are subject to change, please understand. But instead of the student having to know the parent's name, social, and date of birth, beginning ideally with the 26-27 FAFSA, all they will have to do is know the parent's email to send them an invite. All right. Once they enter the email and invite their parent, they will get a code. Here's on the pending submission. There's a code, if you notice here, that the student will receive to then share with the parent, okay? And then when the parent logs in and sees that invite, they will then enter that code that the student provides them to access their part of the FAFSA. This is the one update, Monique, that I have since my presentation at SACAC in Atlanta a few weeks ago. And again, folks, as always, is this official? Is it guaranteed to happen? We shall see, right? But that is the thought that this is going to happen for the 26-27 cycle. And I will say, I think I've already said finally like 4 times. I apologize. Just because some of you may be thinking about this, and Monique, they're probably saying like, Jason, why haven't you said anything? But a few things I want to end with. Understand, folks, Pell Grant right now for 25-26 is going to be the same amount as it was for 24-25. However, there is a Pell shortfall that is being experienced. I think that is something professionally all of us need to watch at obviously the federal government level, because there is a Pell Grant shortfall. we shall see what this might mean for our students going in, not necessarily for 25, 26, but beyond. Data security. Monique, I think this is important for me to share with everyone. We have seen, unfortunately, a rash of fraudulently created FSCIDs, so those accounts to do the FAFSA. When you're working with someone that's never touched the FAFSA and they're getting messages that, oh, your social's already in use, they need to call FAFSA and they need to see what's going on. And if it is a fraudulent FSCID, the FSA representative will work with them to hopefully get that account reset, retrieved, etc. And then, Monique, I've been working with a lot of families that have then reported that to the Office of Inspector Generals, just simply for the families to, report that fraudulent activity. And then the last thing, U.S. Department of Education. There's a lot of news about the U.S. Department of Education. I'm just going to say, stay tuned, right? Just stay tuned. All you need to know. Just stay tuned. And I'll end it at that. Guys, Monique, thank you. I know it's 10 o'clock. I apologize.
No, thank you, Jason. Such excellent information. You always do such a great job of making sure it's digestible for everyone that listens in. So thank you so much. And also, Jason, you had a few people that asked for your email, and I know you're usually open to them contacting you. If you could put in the chat the best email for them to reach you for those specific questions they may have, or just for follow-up.
All right, and thank you so much, Jason. And want to introduce our next guest or speaker. Is going to be Ashley Young. She is a longtime supporter of SACAC, longtime presenter, longtime advocate for students. Been on both sides of the both sides of the desk, and now is the senior education policy analyst for the Georgia Budget Policy Institute. We've been looking at her slides, and I know you all are in for a treat. It's hard to top Jason's financial aid spill, but I think Ashley will be the person that will come close or match it. So thank you so much, Ashley.
Thank you so much for having me, Darren. Good morning to everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I have a couple of, while they are pulling up the slides, I have just a couple of things I want to touch on before I get started. Again, my name is Ashley Young. I'm the Senior Education Policy Analyst at Georgia Budget and Policy Institute, and I am so excited to be here. Actually, you can go back one slide. Perfect. Okay, yeah, so I am so excited to be here, and I just want to give a quick update. I am not yet Dr. Young. Some of you all may have seen that in the email. Darren really wants me to finish my dissertation, apparently. But no, I love that. Thank you so much for understanding that that was a bit of a misprint. I am done with coursework and working on my dissertation. So Dr. Young coming soon. I do want to say really quickly, I'm just coming back from a 2-week vacation, so y'all be patient with me. I'm trying to get back in the saddle. There's been so many amazing things happening in education, and by amazing, I mean scary. Also, you will find that in this presentation, there may be a lot of Georgia leaning, or not a lot, but some Georgia leaning info. Of course, I work for Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. However, a lot of the information that I will cover is obviously going to be related with some of our, many of our peer states here in SACAC, so no worries there. And then this information is heavy. Oh my goodness, it is not easy to take in. It is a time to be in education and in education policy right now, but don't you worry. I have included some uplifting quotes that I think will help carry us as we continue to, grasp for joy in such a tumultuous time. And so I have just included some good quotes for you all. And then Monique, how much time do I have? It's 11:02 right now.
Yeah, until about 11:02, 11:40, 11:45.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Darren and Monique. I'm from the South where our pastors go long, so I don't want to I don't want to get us off track. And then the last thing I'll say, it's just a great day to talk education, right? Like again, while there's so much going on, I really, really hope that this presentation provides you with some level of just enthusiasm and energy to really advocate, get the knowledge first, and then advocate for your students, advocate for future generations. So with that, that is a great segue into our next slide. Thank you so much. So what burns your biscuits? If you have talked to me over the last, I'll say 5 years, I have just been talking about biscuits. And by biscuits, I mean, what burns your biscuits is like, what is just so egregious? What issue in education? I heard a pastor put breaks your heart. Um, what is just something where you've got to put your feet on the floor in the morning to make sure that you are working to move the needle on change for this particular issue? And let's be clear, because we have to have time for ourselves, our families, those who depend on us. We can't take on all of the issues. So I really want, as we're having this conversation, and feel free to put in the chat what burns your biscuits, right? But I really want you to be thinking, what are those 1 to 2, right? We want to have more depth than breadth, because we want to, as one of my professors put it, we have a 10-layer cake, and we are just a slither of that 10-layer cake, right? So we want to get some depth and be able to, figure out what is it that burns our biscuit, so we can really focus on making change on that issue. Okay, so I am excited to see what burns everyone's biscuits. Please drop that in the chat. But I'm going to ask the presenter to click the next portion here. So here's what burns my biscuits: the lack of full and equitable investment in higher education. We see a lot of neoliberal policies that are requiring that students are only judged on their merit. And how unfair is that in our country, given our history, right? And thinking about the lack of investment in K-12, and even before we get there, the lack of investment in maternal health. I won't get on health justice because that's not my area, but I can say we see many disproportionate issues with just maternal care. So even being born into this world, there are lots of setbacks that people are already dealing with. So imagine with all of these setbacks trying to afford college at the cost it is today. And I see some hearts coming through. Thank y'all so much, because this is really interconnected in our society. And truly, we need to be aware that this lack of investment and equitable investment in higher education is really just the culmination of what we've seen throughout many of our students' lives. Thank you so much. Okay, so let's keep going, please. All right, lawmakers, we're just going to get to it. Lawmakers should invest in need-based aid. We're done asking because we have the data. We have the student stories. We have the information that says need-based aid overall generally supports and helps students more than merit-based scholarships, right? So if you're in Georgia on this call, I know you're aware of Hope Scholarship, and I know there are other merit-based scholarship programs in other SACAC states. But what a lot of other SACAC states have that Georgia doesn't is need-based aid. Need-based aid is so important, and there are a litany of reasons as to why, but I'm just going to point out here. So you all may see your state up here, right? We're in SACAC, so you may see in the South sort of what our students who have already graduated or have attended college are dealing with in terms of student loan debt. Obviously, this was a point that I was making from my end. I'm working here in Georgia, which is why that's highlighted. Unfortunately, we are leading the pack on that, which is not good. But I have here what your states are looking like, right? In terms of student loan debt per borrower. This is why lawmakers, again, many other reasons, but this is why lawmakers should be investing in need-based financial aid. And we're not talking about just the funding to get them over the finish line. Yes, that's helpful, right? These retention grants or these emergency grants, those are great. But generally, students have to have either 70% or 80% complete towards their degree or credential. We care just as much about that 0 to 70% as we do that 70 to 100%. Yes. And so we need substantial money in the first year, right? Renewable. Let's just say a student has a death in the family, or they're dealing with a mental health crisis, or get pregnant, or get some, I mean, these are all real things, right? They could drop below the required scholarship requirement for their GPA with a merit-based scholarship because it is depending upon your merit. You have to show up. Now, I'm not saying you cannot not show up with a need-based aid scholarship, but what we're saying is we want satisfactory academic progress. We want to make sure that you are still actually progressing towards your degree. These are the key differences of merit-based and also need-based aid scholarships and why we need to invest in need-based. The last thing I'll say here in terms of need-based aid scholarships, it is about equity. I will talk in just a moment a little bit about racial equity. There's a lot of what we need to do in our country. And for us in our research, we have learned that merit-based scholarship is about choices. And choices are nice, but can our kids even get their foot through the door? Can we even access the opportunities to then have the, oh, I love UGA or I want to go to Kennesaw State or Spelman? Well, that's great, but we are just trying to get kids through the door. Yeah, I'm getting chills as I say this because this is so real. And this work is obviously so near and dear to me. So I will keep going before I take off running in here. Okay, student narrative. So I wanted to share this with you all. This comes from EdTrust, one of my revered education research organizations. I've been following them for years, but I wanted to share this. A student says, I thought I would be able to do it. I thought genuinely I would be able to like, okay, I'm going to start a master's degree. Okay, a PhD. You're going to make more money, right? It's like an American dream, excuse me. You get educated, you're going to make money, and therefore you will be able to pay off your debt. There was never a moment while I was in school and thought I was not going to be able to pay off debt. Not one moment. It was only when I went into repayment and saw the interest thing that I was like, there ain't no way in hell I'm going to, there's no way. If I'm paying $1,300 a month, and again, $200 of it only goes to the principal, I will be dead before that principal balance ever gets paid off. Y'all, this is near and dear to me for many different reasons. Real quick, the Ed Trust did an amazing piece on Jim Crow debt where they really focus on Black women borrowers, because unfortunately, Black women have the highest student loan debt amount, both undergrad and grad. So you overlay that with the gender discrimination in the workplace, where white women are generally paid about 66 cents to a white man's dollar. Oh my goodness. This is so monumental in a way that we have to be advocating for equitable financial aid, right? Need-based financial aid that are going to address some of these issues. There's so much packed in here. I'm sure you all from your own journey can resonate with some of this. And let me just be clear, I'm not new to this. I am true to this. I am from a rural area, first generation college student. I am a Pell Grant recipient. I'm a recipient of the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. So I have been here. And I tell folks, I didn't know if I had borrowed $1,000 or $100,000 when it was all said and done. And so this work that we are doing, and I know I'm not the only one, it is very personal. Much of us are much like Jade, that we were just thinking, you go to job, especially for our millennials, you go to college, excuse me, you get a job. Surely I'll be able to pay. And here we are. So lots to take in, but wanted to share that student narrative. Let's talk a little bit about the Pell Grant purchasing power. This is a crisis, everyone, and these numbers are a little old. Jason gave some new updated numbers, but we're still sort of in the same crisis, right? So essentially, the Pell Grant is not keeping up with the cost of college. I have conversations with lawmakers, and they are, of the baby boomer generation. And perhaps in their generation, they were able to pay for college and go to college at the same time. But that is just not the reality, right? So we are seeing that it is outpacing, the cost of college is outpacing the maximum. So not every student, of course, gets the maximum, but it is outpacing the maximum by, as you can see, this huge gap here. The average, cost of college, and this was 22 to 23, was around $23,000, and the maximum is $6,800. yet again, another reason why we need full investment, why my biscuits are burning, and why we need need-based aid. Next slide, please. Okay, racial equity matters. I mentioned I was going to talk about this. I wanted to share this stat from TICA's. This is another great organization that does some amazing work around college access. They are letting us know that, look, the students who are relying on Pell are mostly students of color. 60%. That's to me is just an overwhelming number that should really, really break our hearts, right? 60% of Black students rely on the Pell Grant. This is why we don't need the elimination of the Department of Ed, which I'll talk in depth about in just a moment. 50% of our Hispanic and Latino students, 45% of American Indian and Alaska Native, and about 39 of our Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander students. Now, generally, when I'm presenting this information in Georgia, I actually talk a lot about white students too. There's still a major group of white students who are having to take out loans. Now, not at the same rate as the students of color, but what I tell folks is everyone. It's white students, it's Black students, it's Hispanic and Latino students. So when we invest in our students, we help all of us. So just wanted to make sure that you all have an understanding of why racial equity matters here. And I think Darren said I can navigate the slides here, so I can do that as well. Thank you. Y'all give it up for Darren. He's a great assistant. All right. Again, why racial equity matters. Again, just a bit Georgia leaning, but I just want you all to get a perspective. In Georgia, the University System of Georgia, Black students have the highest amount of student loan debt totaling $337 million. Again, white students aren't too far behind. Granted, there are more white students, so disproportionately, it is very different for Black students, but what we are saying is that we need full investment for all students. To the right that you will see Black students in USG have the highest borrowing rate at 55%. And so again, you take a state like Georgia, and I'm sure some of you all, even with need-based aid, could be improved, right? The amount. But when you're not fully investing in higher education, over almost 50% of our students in Georgia are Pell Grant eligible. And then you see how much students are having to borrow just to go to college. We see how not only racial equity matters, but in general, full investment matters. So I will continue to talk about racial equity because it is at the heart and the center of the research that we do. Okay, I'm gonna try next slide. Okay, I told you all, so that was heavy, yes, but I told you all I would have quotes. One of my favorite intellectuals, her name is Dr. Bettina Love. We actually, she graduated from the doctoral program that I'm in at Georgia State. We even have the same advisor. But she says, abolitionist educators. She says the word teachers, but I've included all of us. But abolitionist educators advocate for children they will never meet or see because they are visionaries. That is who we are today. I love this quote. I'm passing this on to you all because I want you to know that you too can do this work, right? I often say that the capacity to make this change is in this room, is on this call, right? So we are advocating for little kids we may never meet or see. Again, we are visionaries in that regard. Okay, threats to education funding. Darren said, hey, I want you to talk a little bit about college affordability, and then I want you to touch on some of these federal policies. I said, no problem. So, and I have my sources here because we lean a lot on our national partners to get this information, right? So I just want to kind of quickly go over this. And then the National Association, I think, for Student Financial Aid Administrators is where I will give a lot of this background. So I want to make sure that they have credit for this. So Title I funds, including the Pell Grant. So I also work on K-12, and a lot of my focus with K-12 is Title I funds when it comes to sort of the threat and the issues of rolling back those funds. But what I really want to point out to you all, and I may be letting you know something you're already aware of, but of course this includes the Pell Grant program too. It includes other programs that I'll name in just a moment, but certainly Pell Grant, right? Student loan income-based repayment plans. Those are obviously very vulnerable right now. Public service loan forgiveness. I've seen a few headlines that the Trump-Vance administration will begin garnishing wages. just a crisis all around, right? And then another threat, this is just sort of happening all around us, right? The inflation and increased cost of college. The cost of college is not going down. And all of these issues, the cost of college, of course, is not going down. And then we have DEI attack. So we will, unfortunately, are bracing ourselves to see the decrease in scholarship programs related to race and ethnicity and income. This administration has made it very clear and made it clear in Project 2025 that they want to focus on merit. And that is a major challenge because we have a lot of issues with equity in our country. And when we just focus on merit, it takes away from atoning for these past injustices that students and families have had to combat along the way. So let me give you a little bit more information here about some of these attacks on the federal level. So the president cannot alone eliminate the Department of Education or federal student aid programs through an executive order. However, executive orders are directives. They, as I like to say, till the land and really empower our state lawmakers and Congress to say, hey, well, we're gonna, find a way to get rid of this particular department, or we're going to do away with this or eliminate this because our president has given that executive order, which is why who's in office and what they're ordering is very, very important. So an executive order alone, again, cannot eliminate the Department of Education or the federal student aid programs authorized under Title IV of the Higher Education Act. So the Department of Ed, of course, was established by Congress through the Department of Education Organization Act, and this was around 1979, which included the Higher Education Act, of course. So eliminating the department would require an act of Congress to repeal or fundamentally alter this law. Federal student aid programs like Pell Grant, like the Federal Direct Loan Program, Federal Work Study are all authorized and governed by the Higher Education Act. And again, this is a federal law passed by Congress. So to be clear, eliminating these programs would again require this Congress to repeal. And so I think it's so important to make that distinction because it can get really scary, right? And of course, legislation would need to be passed. So what would happen to federal aid programs if the Department of Education were dismantled or abolished? So without Congress rewriting the Higher Education Act, this scenario could create significant legal and operational chaos, which we are seeing right now. We are seeing a lot of litigation from folks who are suing and also, or organizations, excuse me, that are suing, and then just so many unanswered questions. The good news is the law still stands. Higher Education Act explicitly assigns the responsibility of administering these federal student aid programs to the Secretary of Education. But we're all still wondering, like, who's in charge? So without the Department of Education, a legislative plan for transition, which we don't really have one, would still be legally authorized, but no federal agency would be clearly designated to manage them. This would include critical functions, of course, like the administration of the Pell Grant, Federal Work Study. And so a lot of what I just mentioned may be something that, again, you have already heard or seen in a headline, and it all feels very chaotic. And unfortunately, that's because it is. But we know that as educators, this is very difficult to take in because how do we answer questions for students and families, right? For students who are, with all due respect, dirt poor, right? How are we going to empower that student to even think about accessing college when so much is going on? And so I just wanted to share with you kind of what are some of these issues. But let me tell you, I'm a person who has joy. I'm a person who believes, and okay, we're going to have our moment. And I need to feel what I feel, but we are also very much going to ensure that we are getting some solutions to help combat these problems. Now, y'all give me just a moment. Let me get back to my screen here. So Darren, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay.
We got it over here. We good.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Thank you. So 3 ways to strategically advocate as an educator. Okay, get your pen and paper or your phone, get your notes section open. I'm going to give you 3 practical ways because what I'm not going to do is give you all of this heavy information and not provide any sort of solutions to help move the needle forward, right? So the first way, so next slide, please, we're going to contact your lawmakers in Congress via Action Alert. So if you just heard me say, this executive order cannot eliminate the Department of Education. It is just a directive. It's a strong one and a very difficult one we're having to navigate. But now this is in the hands of Congress. From my understanding, there are already some bills that have been introduced in Congress to eliminate the Department of Education. We are hearing though that this is not very popular amongst Congress just yet. But we cannot rely on that information or that intel. We just know that we have to work very hard to do our part. So here's what I'm proposing. Step 1, contact your lawmakers. Now, this is just a screenshot here, but Darren, if you go to the next slide, you'll see the actual QR code to this particular action alert. So what I love about action alerts is that organizations do the difficult work and they just set it up to where you're able to put your information in and you can just send directly with your address, of course, can send directly to your lawmakers in Congress to actually flood their inboxes and say, hey, we need the Department of Education, and here's why. So please, your first strategic way is to contact your lawmakers via Action Alert. And this is just one Action Alert. You may find, whether it's through the National College Access Attainment or Attainment Network, NCAN, or NACAC, or other ways, feel free. Just make sure you're contacting your lawmakers via some sort of action alert, because again, this is in our hands to really put pressure on Congress to save the Department of Education. All right, next slide, please. Now, this is one of my favorite parts. As you all can tell, I love to talk. So sharing our stories, that is the important part here. We can never underestimate the power of our stories. I'm just going to jump to the last one here. It says, make it memorable and compelling. Remember that as I share this with you, okay? First, and this piece of advice, I want to make sure you understand to clearly and concisely communicate your story. So you may want to write down, think of a student, get a pseudonym, but think of a very compelling story that you could tell any lawmaker on the state level, on the federal level, or you could share with someone in your Board of Education, in your district, right? But think of a student story that has really touched you and hit the high points that can really help them understand how this could impact, not only the student, of course, but their state's economy. Our lawmakers care a lot about the state economy and the federal economy. And so when we talk about how investing in students means investing in our economy, that is going to definitely ring a bell for them. Share who you are. So paint a picture of who you are and your students and who you represent. Who are you? Who are they? Why are they unique, right? We can all tell that story. Share how the issue impacts you or your students and the specific challenges you face. Again, if you've attended a legislative day in your state, which I hope you have, this is just a plug. I used to be a legislative day co-chair, and I tell folks, side note, that if you can be a legislative day co-chair, you could probably be a president of SACAC. It is just that much work. That's taking nothing away from the presidency, of course, but just saying, it's a lot of work. So please show up, please go. And again, you can share how these issues impact you. Next, you'll want to highlight data and figures that make your story come alive. Again, my Georgia folks, you can depend on me, but I will also say for folks in surrounding states, and I can share this information separately. I didn't remember to share it in this presentation, but we are part of a larger Senate for Budget for Policy Priorities, and there are many other state partnerships that also are located in your state. And so they do a lot of the work that I do at GBPI in your respective states. So you may very well be able to find that data and figures, because let me tell you, you can't do it all. If you're working as a practitioner, the likelihood that you're going to have the data to do this is very unlikely. That's why we have to work as a team. But you'll want to find like example of the dollar amount the tuition has risen. Even if you just take a screenshot of just like the Pell Grant purchasing power, right? Like these are ways that you can really drive home that information. And again, as I've mentioned, you're going to make it memorable and compelling. I know you will. All right, next slide, please. All right. So story of self. Again, share who you are, your connection to the work. Again, that positionality, as I just told you, I'm sure you all have already painted a picture. Okay, Ashley Young is from a rural area. She was Pell Grant eligible. Like you already are understanding who I am. You know, what is the name of your organization if you're able to share? What communities or individuals does your organization serve? Like just telling them as much as possible. Then you want to make sure you tell the story of us, connect with your audience. What needs does this work feel like? Being able to paint a broader picture of how we are all connected through shared values, and the work that you are doing as an educator is going to help not just your student and your community, but everyone. And then lastly, the story of now. Invite the audience to take action. Invite your, again, your lawmakers, like especially when you're talking to your Congress folks, you have an idea of the organizations that are in your district. Being able to connect with them on that in that way is going to be super important. Okay, so if you plan to use your story with policymakers, you will want to connect and make specific policy asks in this section. Don't, again, we're finding those one or two issues, right? And just nailing down that and our asks, because that is going to be so important. Again, working with lawmakers every day, they are so busy. When they tell you they are busy, that's actually true. What they're busy doing may be a different conversation, but they are very busy. So you want to make sure that you are succinct, you're compelling, and that you are making very, very specific what your asks are. So that's number two, share your story. Number three, as I land this plane here, you want to contact lawmakers on your own. Okay. We live in a democratic society. We're struggling, but it's still a democracy, right? And I often say it would be ashamed if you never use your voice beyond the voting booth, right? This is how you engage in what I like to call participatory democracy. Contact your lawmakers, right? I have a very interesting story, which I would love to tell another day, of how I even got into this work. It was just a lot of it was just feeling my way around in the dark and contacting lawmakers to say, hey, I'm really interested in this issue. I would love to be able to connect with you, and just started sort of following the breadcrumbs there. But you can never underestimate the power of contacting your lawmaker on your own. Again, this is a screenshot, but you have the website right here. And all you have to do is put in your address. I put mine in earlier. All my folks came up: Representative Nakima Williams, Senator John Ossoff, Senator Raphael Warnock. So those are my three folks in Congress. And it was super easy to get their information. You can reach out to them via email, reach out to their team, and it may feel like an uphill battle, but again, these are the strategic ways in which we can advocate. So again, contacting your lawmakers via Action Alert is set up for you. All right. Hopefully you all got that link from the QR code. I spent some time talking about how you share your story, make it compelling, have your specific asks. Excuse me. And then number three, contacting your lawmakers on your own. And this particular website that I have outlined here will give you that information. I had one more student story, but I think I'm going to skip that. Just y'all excuse me. It was a really great one. It talked about how students working two jobs, and I know we've all heard this, are really with our folks here, our practitioners, don't really need to belabor it, but I did want to just quickly say that there are so many students that are depending on us, right? And so it is so important when you are talking to your students and you hear their stories again. This is how we loop those stories in. So unfortunately, I think I did skip over that slide, but no worries. As I just mentioned, I'm coming back from vacation, so that's my grace right there, y'all. Last slide here. My former Congressman John Lewis, God rest his soul, he says, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. So we often see this as optional, but this great man, this great civil rights leader, excuse me, literally put his life on the line. His life on the line at such a young age and continue to serve um, the great folks of Georgia and just our nation in general with his policy priorities and his values. And so he is telling us when you see something, you have to say something. When it's not right, you have to speak up. So that is the last quote that I want to end on. I know it has been a lot of information here. This next slide will provide you with some information on how to contact me. And I, again, am so thankful to have this time with you all. Thank you so much, folks, for putting this information into the chat so you can have a great takeaway today. That is it for me. And I can certainly take some questions, or you can obviously reach out to me via email.
And we're going to give a couple minutes for people to throw some questions in the chat. And thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation. We appreciate you. All right.
You can always feel free to follow up. I know you all have had a pretty extensive day working and listening in from presenters, so no worries. I am here and always happy to help as always. Thank you again so much for having me.
And while we wait on Derek to hop on the call, we do want to go back and just plug some of our SACAC events. Kristen, would you mind covering what events we have coming up for the summer?
Yeah, so for some folks who may have hopped on late, we talked earlier about 3 events that we have coming up this summer. We have Summer Seminar, Dry Run, and Sweet Tea Tour. So Summer Seminar is a great option for folks who may be starting on the high school side. So when I started on the high school side, I attended it in Charlotte. And it's great just to hear some advice and tips for things like writing recommendation letters, helping to build college lists, and then you also get to visit some college campuses in the local area. So this summer it will be at Belmont and Vanderbilt in July, and registration is currently open. So if you are interested in that, I highly encourage you to register for that. You can also, if you know your office is hiring someone, but you don't know who yet, you can register and then add the name later. And then next up is Dry Run, and this is great for folks that are starting out on the college side, so new admissions counselors. This will be hosted at Rollins this summer. And Darren, will you switch to that slide? This will be hosted at Rollins July 20th to July 23rd. Registration's currently open. So this really gets folks ready for their first travel season. Again, if you know you're hiring, but you don't know who yet, you can go ahead and reserve their spot and then add that name later. And then finally is our Sweet Tea Tour. This year it is in South Florida, and there are still spots open. But it does typically fill up. So if you're interested in doing this one, I would encourage you to go ahead and register. But it allows you to see several college campuses in the area. And we really do all of the tour prep for you. So you really just get to hop on a bus and visit all of the campuses. So again, if you're interested in that, I would definitely encourage you to go ahead and register.
And while we have a captive audience, we also want to speak about ways to get involved. Monique, can you talk about maybe volunteer opportunities we have coming up?
Sure. We first, if you don't mind, I'd love to just put a little shameless plug that if you are not a SACAC member, we want you to become a SACAC member. And the beauty in this is we have the opportunity for what we call FAM, or free access membership, for those public high school counselors and community-based organization college access professionals to join at no cost. I'm gonna say it again. Joining at no cost, meaning free. A couple of my free words, my favorite words are free, clearance, and BOGO at Publix. So the access membership is free for those professionals. For those who are not, it's a $45 fee, but it's an annual fee for membership, and it comes with all the, of course, bells and whistles of having access to our various programs and resources in Growthstone, which is our resource hub that we're utilizing. So just a shameless plug that if you are not a member, we hope that you will consider joining us. And if you fall in the categories for the FAM membership, that is at no cost to you. And once you become a member, we love for you to join and get actively engaged in our committees. We talked a little bit about the board, and under the board are a host of amazing volunteers that, like I shared earlier, that help us thrive. And another shameless plug for SAI specifically, we do have a few volunteer openings under state and area initiatives, as you can see on the screen, in the state of Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana. We have the need for several volunteers for our driving workshop and also for our state chair position, which I talked a little bit about earlier. So if you are interested in being actively engaged with SAI, we would love to have you reach out and share your interest, or you can submit a form online, and we'll put some information in the chat for the free access membership, as well as how you can volunteer with SACAC. And if you're looking to learn more about each of these committees to see how you can find your fit, no worries. We have information on our website about each of the committees and how you can serve. You can always reach out to the board member or committee chair that's name is listed in email and ask any questions that you may have.
Hey, Monique, someone asked what the responsibility would be as a drive-in coordinator. Do you want to cover that?
Sure. So the drive-in workshop coordinator, you can also go back to the slide, Darren. You are coordinating the workshop that happens every spring. And typically that workshop is going to be between around the end of January to maybe late February, early March, right before our conference. And it is an opportunity just for counselors or college access professionals and advisors to get informational sessions. We typically do them either virtually or in person, and each state has one or two co-chairs that collaborates to plan that session. So this is our SACAC wide drive-in workshop, where we provided like a state of SACAC, and we'll give information about NACAC as well. In those state-specific sessions, is more specific to the state or general issues or concerns that are going on currently, and it's great information. So the responsibility would be for that person to coordinate that event. And while it's not going to be held into the spring, we typically start that coordinating in the fall. And we are there, the three of us, right beside you to help plan and prep for that, so you're not on your own. Were there any more questions, Kristen?
All right, and we're gonna take a 4-minute break to allow for our next presenter, NACAC President-elect Derek Du Bois, to hop on. So if you want to get up, grab a sip of water, take a quick stretch break, we'll hop back on in 4 minutes.
Okay, so we hope everyone had an opportunity to get up and stretch, grab a sip of water or refill. We are going to be wrapping up soon, but we are excited because we have an opportunity to plug our SACAC conference from who I like to call the GOAT herself, Miss Anita Hugh, who is also our president-elect for our great organization, to chat a little bit about our conference next year. And I am excited to turn it over to you, Anita.
Hi, everybody. Y'all are doing such great work. This has been awesome. I just wanted to quickly plug our 60th anniversary coming up in New Orleans. It will be here before you know it. We are so excited, and thank y'all for your feedback for everything that took place in Atlanta. This is probably my last time really plugging conference in this way because you all will have Corey Bailey as your annual conference chair, and I'm telling you, he has so many wonderful ideas and is already executing so many things. It's going to be a great time. So this is your formal invitation to do all of the things with our 60th anniversary in New Orleans at the Sheraton off of Canal Street. So put in a proposal for a session, which you'll see that come in kind of late summer, early fall. Join us and volunteer. We already have so many ways. You'll start to see a little bit of a campaign that hasn't happened since our 50th anniversary. So this is your formal invitation to join us in New Orleans, 60th anniversary. And Dr. Corey Bailey, I'm so excited. I'm just going to go on record and say I'm just so excited to be working with him again in a different capacity. But we look forward to seeing y'all. And anything else you needed, Monique? Was that good? Was that?
That was great. I was going to ask you to talk a little bit about how they can get involved as volunteers at the conference, because we were talking a little about volunteers.
Absolutely. I think that this feels like we'll want more involvement, more enthusiasm and excitement. So you guys will get email communication from us about the ways in which you can do that, probably a little earlier than normal. So just keep an eye out for that. We're trying to give y'all a break from Atlanta, but we will be back in the swing of everything soon. So thank you. And we look forward to working with everybody.
Awesome. And thank you so much for your service. She has been nonstop working in SACAC. And so super excited for you to continue to grow and to serve under you in your leadership. So thank you for your service. I did throw in the chat a link to the annual conference so you guys can see the information for the save the date. And if you have any questions, you can also reach out to Mr. Corey Bailey. Dr. Corey Bailey. All right, I'm kicking it back to you, Dan.
All right. And speaking of nonstop, we have our last guest speaker, Mr. Derek Du Bois. He is the chair-elect of NACAC. And he joined us at SACAC. So a lot of you all probably heard his speech at the lunch. We asked him to hop on and he graciously agreed to do so. He is actually traveling. He's not in Colorado at the moment. He's in Birmingham, Alabama, I believe, for his brother's wedding, but he wanted to take time out to say a couple of words to you all. So thank you, Derek.
Yes, Darren, and thank you. And thank you for Monique for y'all having me and the SACAC family for having me. Yes, I am here in your region right now, here in Birmingham, Alabama, for my little cousin's wedding later on this evening. So I am here looking at the wonderful highway in Birmingham right now at the Birmingham Sheraton. But it's always great to be with the SACAC family. And again, thank you all for all that you continue to do and the wonderful opportunities that you give both of your association, but also the greater NACAC family as well. As you all have always heard me say, I always believe the strength of NACAC as a whole is through the work of all of our affiliates. And I cannot thank you enough for everything that you all continue to do. One of the things that Darren asked me to come in and talk about was just kind of like the direction that NACAC is moving in right now. And also as I get ready to step into my chair role this upcoming year, kind of the futuristic aspects of what we plan to see in NACAC. As you know already, there's a lot going on in higher education right now. This is not the first time that NACAC has dealt with these types of times within our profession, but we are very much prepared and ready for whatever may happen right now, and to continue to work with our membership. Some of the things that many of you have already seen already as a result of some of the current things happening with our new presidential administration is that NACAC continues to be diligent in our work and working with the Department of Education, working with this new administration, but also advocating for our members, higher education as a whole, because sometimes, let's keep it real here, folks don't know what they talk about sometimes and don't know what education is. So it is our responsibility to educate some other folks about really what the realities are of higher education and how we support our students along the way. So within that, advocacy is truly a cornerstone of the work that you will continue to see of NACAC this coming year, and as we continue to move forward. Some of the advocacy work, of course, pertains to education, being open and honest about what diversity, equity, and inclusion is. And that is not something to be afraid of or to run from. That is something we are very diligent on in our conversations and how we address this with the current administration, but continue to own the message of higher education. Some of our practices, of course, will come through many written forms that you already see through our journal and college admissions and very other websites and email platforms that NACAC continues to engage with our members readily and on a readily fashion. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, our work with the Department of Education really is essential right now. I'm very proud of the work that we have, of course, that we have a new advocacy member with our government relations here at NACAC. Sean Robbins, he's our new director for advocacy at NACAC. This is a role that we had about 7-8 years ago prior to the pandemic. And within this current past year, we have brought the advocacy role back. We see it as something that is essential for us to have a voice on Capitol Hill, but to continue to tell the story of NACAC and all of our affiliate members as a whole. Of course, sharing our vision with Congress and the new administration. Our NACAC CEO, Angel Perez, has continued to share our association's vision for post-secondary access with the 119th Congress and the Trump administration. We have also submitted a letter to all of our legislatures that NACAC has outlined the association's priorities for student and equity-centered post-secondary admission, but also ethical practices as it relates to college admissions and college counseling. And so please know NACAC is on the front leading edge as it comes to promoting the work that we're doing and advocating for all of our members. Of course, you'll continue to see virtual opportunities to engage with our members, just like you're having right now with the virtual program today. We always find it to be important to engage our members in so many different ways. You'll continue to hear this about new and innovative ways that NACAC will continue to lead and govern our association into the future. You'll continue to see this in pre and post-conference activities. We want to make sure we're continuing to engage with our members throughout the entire cycle of the year. You'll see it through our special interest groups that continue to find ways to connect with our members in other meaningful, impactful ways that are meaningful to them that support their membership and their legacy in NACAC. So these are things that we're very excited about as we continue to move forward in this upcoming year here. But what's really important to me, I will always say, is the strength and the power of we, that we are NACAC. We are a true body of members. We care about our members, but even more so, we care about the future of our students. We want to make sure the opportunities that so many of us have had over the years, both as professionals and the students that we serve and have served in the past, continue to have those same opportunities and outcomes for generations that will happen long after us. So that's what I see as a visionary aspect as we continue to move forward. But also I love to focus on, as we continue to move forward as an association, is that we think about ways that we give back to ourselves. And of course, continuing to be forward-thinking in our fundraising efforts at NACAC. When I first came to the board in 2017, this was a cornerstone of something that was really important to me when I joined the NACAC board, was being more thoughtful and intentional around fundraising and development. As many of my friends in SACAC know, this is what I call admission part 2 for me. I left the profession for a very short period of time and went to the alumni and advancement world, but also returned back to the admission role shortly thereafter. But also within that, I was able to bring that development and advancement mindset to our work in college admissions. And some of my professional opportunities I've been able to create pathways for financial awareness, but also fundraising. And I've also brought that to NACAC. With the hiring for our director for philanthropy, Tommy Amol, I am really proud of the work that he's doing for the new center of reimagining higher education within NACAC. We are very proud of the work that he and his team are doing to create new opportunities for our members, but to push higher education beyond the boundaries of NACAC. Of course, one of the things that have come of this, of course, I mentioned, what was it, early, back in April. It's kind of hard to believe that we are at the end of the month here. So when I was with you all at the beginning of the month, I talked a little bit about the NACAC legacy and our impact report. Some of the things is just kind of a highlight for y'all real quick here. Our membership has nearly doubled in NACAC from 14,000 in 2020 to nearly 28,000 today. That is huge for us. And it was a strategic move as we redesigned the membership model in NACAC. Of course, we've established a new professional certificate programs and other educational offerings, leading to over 7,200 participants this past year that have received some type of credential from NACAC. Other things that we continue to do, of course, a greater presence in the U.S. and international media, bolstering our brand identity and reputation and being the leading voice for higher education. We're growing our college fairs, as many of you know, including 2 global university fairs that took place this past year, both in London and Shanghai. That helped us reach over 125,000 students this past year. So we're very proud of the work that we're doing both in the virtual space, but also in the live space. So let's talk about some ways that we have to continue to engage within the association. As I mentioned earlier this past month, GWI is going to be right back in Atlanta, Georgia this year. So I'm very excited for folks to have the opportunity to experience the robust content that GWI will provide, highlighting the work that we do with students, but also pushing the efforts that we hold dear within NACAC and providing inclusive spaces and communities for our students. So we'll see y'all at that Hyatt Regency across the street from the Marriott where we were for the SACAC annual conference this past year. But also, I'm very proud of the work that our conference planning committee has done in support for the NACAC National Conference in Columbus, Ohio. We'll be back in Columbus. We were there back in 2016 for National Conference, and I'm proud that we're coming back to Columbus, Ohio again. Back when we were in Columbus in 2016, I had the privilege of serving as the LAC chair for National Conference then. It's been kind of cool being on the other side of it now and talking with the current LAC chairs that have been reaching out for different pieces of advice, but I can tell you they are just doing tremendous work in planning this upcoming conference. You may have already witnessed already since we spoke earlier this month that we have released our keynote speaker for that Thursday, Brene Brown. So I know folks are really excited for Brene and the energy that she's going to bring to the conversation at National Conference. But as a whole, I cannot say it enough. We always want you to find ways as SACAC members to find ways to be involved and engaged at the national level. For me, a lot of my involvement started at the affiliate level. I started off in Ohio ACAC. That's where a lot of my work happened, and then moved to Potomac and Chesapeake. And so I got a lot involved at the affiliate level, had the opportunities to work with a lot of my friends all over the country. And that really is what expanded opportunities for me to grow at the national level as well. It has been tremendous, and I can't tell you enough to find ways, even if it's like, hey, asking your supervisor, can I be a part of the registration committee? Hey, registration committee can open up so many doors for folks and folks that you will connect with and really have memorable experiences from in those conversations. So whatever the committee is, it's not too big or small. Get involved. SACAC needs your time and your energy. NACAC needs your time, talent, and energy as well. And that's one thing that I will always continue to promote amongst all of our members. I know there's a lot to unpack there, but it's kind of want to just give like a overarching view of some of the things to look forward to in this upcoming year here at NACAC. But even more so, really, we're winding down in the year in September, where we'll really kick things off again for the next cycle. And I'm really excited about the opportunities to come in the 25-26 cycle of NACAC as well. So with that, I don't know if folks have questions, or if there's anything I can answer. I'm happy to talk more about the amazing things that have happened as a part of this amazing association, but even more so, ways that you can continue to be involved within it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Derek. Y'all, when we called, he answered. Okay. And it was an immediate yes. I want to be there. I want to be present. So thank you so much for giving us a state of NACAC and an update, and just inspiring us to continually to be involved and engaged in not only our affiliate SACAC, but NACAC as well. So I don't see any questions just yet in the chat. Kristen, did you see any, if there were any questions for Derek? No? Okay. Well, Derek, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Excellent job and information. We appreciate you so very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you all so much as well. And thank you all for all that you do in SACAC. You know, you are always have a special place in my heart amongst all of our affiliates. So thank you to my SACAC family.
Thank you. So we are winding down, and just again, another shameless plug. Anita did a phenomenal job in sharing. And Dr. Bailey was actually on the call. He probably had to log off, but just a shout out to Dr. Corey Bailey. He actually used to serve on state and area initiatives, and now he is our conference chair. So he is planning and prepping an amazing conference with the team, and we are super excited. Here's the details. And again, in the chat, you can see a direct link. And when you become a member, you will get even more updates and information about the conference that's up and coming. So on behalf of State and Area Initiatives, myself, Kristen, and Darren, we want to first thank all of our phenomenal presenters. You all were amazing. You shared so much valuable information, and just being on a high still from our conference, which the theme was Embrace the Moment. We hope you felt inspired. We hope you felt informed, and you are encouraged to make an impact. So thank you all for attending today and being actively engaged. If you have any questions, we invite you to shoot us an email. Our information is on the screen, and we are super excited for what's to come in SACAC and NACAC. And again, we can't do this work without you. So thank you, and have an amazing rest of your day and upcoming weekend.